One more positive thing when we prioritize self-care is that when we're less stressed, we can also be more creative. So let me introduce you to our next speaker, João Freitas. João is the CPO of Cofidis, a leading consumer finance player in Portugal. He has spent his career zigzagging between the corporate and the startup world in different industries, and he's discovered a surprising amount of things that are the same and that you need in order to be successful and to innovate. Let's hear it directly from him in his talk, Innovating Inside Corporate Walls. Welcome on stage, a big round of applause for João Freitas.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So after these two last talks, which have been great from Chise and Dominic, I'm going to talk a little bit about transformation of large organizations, specifically around how do you look at product philosophy to do so. But before I get started, actually, and this was not really planned because I didn't know the two talks that were coming before, just saying a couple of notes regarding the two last talks, just in 30 seconds. So first of all, I think I've struggled myself with a fair share of emotional issues along my journey. We can use another word, which sometimes scares people, which is mental health. And obviously, these topics are very difficult, very personal. So having the two types of talks like we had here is just amazing, because I think putting these sort of issues out there is what is going to help us be more brave and just open up and be the best version of ourselves. So the thing I would like to say, or maybe to add to the last chat, is that saying we are just one person, right? So there's no work me and no personal me or family me. There's just me. And of course, these different stressors and things that happen in our lives, they can't be compartmentalized into the different buckets that we kind of normally organize our lives into, and they all play in together. So the better and the faster we recognize that we are one single whole and these things are interconnected, I think the better we can do at kind of having a more clear vision of who we are and how we can balance all of these things in a more harmonious way. So, transformation. Well, there's an Harvard Business Review study from 2016 that tried to estimate what is the total amount of cost which is incurred by organizations because of bureaucracy. They came up with an astonishing figure of $3 trillion just in the US economy alone. And when they did this study, they also found out that the average ratio between managers and employees is 4.1, or was 4.1 back in the day. And obviously, with these two kind of figures, it's easy to think, okay, there's all this fat accumulated into the system, and all of this fat obviously is going to trigger a lot of dysfunction in organizations. And this dysfunction actually scales as the size of the organization scales, and the function is not a linear one. It's actually, it's not linear. It could be exponential here and there, but it's definitely a function which increases the amount of dysfunction as the organizational scales. So let's talk about this hypothetical company, X. Well, that doesn't work anymore, does it? So let's call it Y. So it's Thursday morning, and Y's exec team is sitting on the table. And it's actually end of quarter, beginning of the next one. And as you can see in the picture, the ambience is a bit tense. Those two guys over there, they are fighting over who is to blame because the growth targets of the previous quarter were not met. The other two are shouting at each other because they are discussing whether this particular team should be a centralized team shared across the organization, or whether it should be embedded in the different product teams, and it seems like they're not reaching any conclusion soon. And just the other two, they just don't like each other too much. So Downstairs, a couple of floors, there's also some tension. We have marketing and operations sitting across the table. Operations is saying, hey folks, we are not hitting our targets because customers, they keep calling us, so our productivity is not where it should be, and it's your fault because you're attracting the wrong type of customers. And marketing is saying, wait a minute, no, I mean, we've done all our research, we hired consultants, we have the right metrics, and actually this last quarter was great for us, so, I mean, yeah, this is not our problem. And maybe if we need to do something about it, we miss product on the table as well. Actually, product was here a couple of hours ago on the same room with marketing, and they were talking about growth. So who should own growth targets? Yeah, well, it was the third discussion in 2 months, and they didn't come up with a conclusion yet, so there's another meeting in 2 weeks. Does this ring a bell? I guess so. And the right question to ask is, okay, so if this is just pure nonsense, and as Melissa was saying yesterday, folks are spending too much time deciding how to do the work versus actually doing the work, then we need to define what type of organization do we want to work for, or what type of organization do we want to build. And only after we have answers to these questions, we can then come up with a path forward to try and get there. So my name is João. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Cofidis, a large consumer finance organization here in Portugal, but also operating across other European markets. Just to give you a few numbers, so in Portugal we are 800 people. Last 5 years we average 80 million of EBITDA, so it's a relatively profitable company. And yeah, you might ask, so why are you talking about transformation if you deliver 80 million every year, 800 people, doesn't sound like too bad of a ratio. True, but there was 2 things actually that happened a few years ago. So the first thing was, we were at a room like this one, maybe not fighting as much, but maybe a little bit, and we were looking at some numbers, and the numbers were, well, numbers are great because numbers tell stories. And we were looking at our P&L of the previous year, of that year, and we did an exercise together with finance, trying to project how that P&L was going to look year on year for a few years if we did nothing. And why was this an issue? Because in consumer finance, as in, well, most finance organizations, but consumer finance specifically, this is a very profitable industry. In the 90s, they averaged like 15% return on equity on a yearly basis, so highly profitable business in Europe. But as you know, we also contributed to the over-indebtedness that then led to 2008, 2012. And of course, all of these organizations, they were built with the premise that there was a certain revenue model with certain pricing, etc., that has been there historically, and we indexed the way we designed the organization according to it. And because of regulation and because of what happened after the crisis, the same kind of hypotheses, the same assumptions could not be utilized, and therefore there was a big need to basically rethink the whole model. The second topic was we had just acquired a bank in 2017, and it was roughly the same size, roughly the same EBITDA contribution. And yeah, the acquisition, although it was very contributive when it comes, well, to economics, etc., it was a pain in the ass. When I arrived at Cofidis, end of 2019, I spent a full month, well, not working, but just sitting with 100 people individually and having coffees, introducing myself, and just asking questions and trying to learn a little bit about the company. And what I found was that every single person would tell me that, well, the acquisition had just been done in a very, well, naive way, because we were just trying to merge 2 things together without no clear vision of what the target organization should look like, how the target culture should look like, etc. And these are actually the 2 things coming together for our need to transform. And I'll just tell you a little bit about what we learned, although what we've learned has to do with our specific case, right? As Tammy said, it's very important to know where you are, where do you come from, and different organizations come from different places, and they sit in different places today. And therefore, this worked for us. This has been some of our learnings. They are not necessarily applicable to all of your contexts, obviously. So, topic number one, and this is really, in my view, like a cultural transformation thing, right? So, at Cofidis, there was a very top-down culture when I arrived at the company. And this top-down culture, well, was obviously not very helpful for a number of reasons. And it was very kind of ingrained when it comes to culture and, well, the history of the company, etc. And when we look at how decisions were made, well, essentially we had the very common phenomenon of the highest paid person opinion in the room being the outcome of that particular meeting, and then the decision that was going to be made. And I think the key thing here was there was a lot of role modeling to be done, and here leaders across the board have a particularly important role when it comes to being humble and not being afraid to show that they don't know, and when they think they know, but they are shown that what they thought they knew is not actually right, being able to revert, go back, and actually try to go for a different path. And we've done a lot of this. I think today the organization is very much more on the left than on the right. And one particular example when it comes to culture, which I think is cool to share, is that we look at the organization as a product. And what does that mean? It means that we have particular hypotheses in terms of what's not working, why it's not working, and then we shift things around to try to experiment. So we might move one team to the other side, we might distribute this team, etc. We don't wait, as we used to, for a 4-year restructuring transformation plan, blah, blah, blah. We are continuously experimenting with the organization and measuring the outcomes. So we measure how our team's delivering faster, is more value being accrued to customers and to retailers, because our business model has these two angles, etc., etc. So this is really ingredient number one, and it has to do with this cultural transformation that we've been doing. The second topic is around the kind of, just a position of what it means to really be aligned and collaborate in a systematic way versus merely being kind of tied up to KPIs that have been defined in a very siloed way in the organization. So it doesn't mean that in our organization we are not outcome-oriented and we don't measure stuff and, we don't orient ourselves towards the metrics that are moving or not moving, but it means that we need to think of the system as a whole. Because if you think of a car, for example, you might have the car with the best wheels in the market, but if the doors of the car, they don't open, it's a shitty car. And if it's a shitty car, like the system doesn't work, and it's the same as in a company. You might have a particular part of the company working marvelously, but if the whole system doesn't function together, it's not a very good company. And therefore, what we did was really try and bring kind of more global and shared outcomes to the table, having different teams being kind of evaluated and incentivized to share particular outcomes, versus having a very matrix-based, division-based KPI orientation, and this has really helped us as well. The third ingredient has really contributed to the transformation we've done around our business model. And here, we've already talked a little bit about this today. Before we were really in the camp of top-down decision-making and then expecting the teams to magically execute everything perfectly. And I think today we are much more into having the leadership providing the guidance, providing the purpose, providing the why, and then having teams driving the decisions, driving the ideas. Of course, not all decisions are made by teams, but having this equilibrium between top-down and bottom-up, I think has really helped us find a couple of answers that today are helping us deliver way more value to customers and at the end of the day have a much better financial performance. So after 4 years of work, just for you to have a sense, we've increased our NPS by 16 points. We delivered under the same funding conditions. I need to make this bracket between, because the funding conditions on the credit market have changed a lot, but under the same funding conditions, we are 25% more profitable than 4 years ago. And, well, essentially, I think this is all the result of working in a completely different way. So, to finish off, my last 2 cents, and, well, I could have written designers and other folks, etc., but for simplicity's sake, I just picked 3 roles. So for engineers, I mean, this transformation does not need to be started from the top down. I mean, obviously, you need top-down buy-in, you need a top-down vision, but at the end of the day, everyone is responsible to show up every day and try to do a better job. So engineers, instead of just building, just ask why. Why are we doing this? And if you're thrown evidence, yeah, maybe from time to time, go check whether that evidence is actually right. Go be curious and go check what's behind the rationale. For PMs, I mean, PMs, they have very intense jobs, as we know. So if I spend like 200% of my time on my individual scope, but I don't look to the PM next door that has a different responsibility, I'm not going to find particular ways to create synergy or to give out a hand and to look for collaboration among teams and also synergies when it comes to product delivery. And last but not least, for executives. I think I've touched upon this a little bit as well, but I mean, if we as leaders are not humble and not curious, we are not going to have the right level of openness for this kind of garden to blossom. So I think it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you all, and bye-bye.